CV into Bangor University, I thought, wow, Jack, you've been around an awful lot. And then I thought, actually, you've gained an awful lot of experience from being around an awful lot. I also thought, Jack, you've been around a lot in a lot of different identities, which was really interesting for me to reflect on, and what has really taken me to the point in my career now where, although I manage the Wellbeing Service here at Bangor, I have a particular interest in working with the LGBT, or what I would own as, for myself, the queer community. I wanted to show this first slide because somebody once said to me when I did some training, and it was around counselling, Jack, is this a health warning about going into counselling? Because you started off here, you ended up there, and now you're here. Should we have a warning for people just how much they change as individuals throughout counselling training, throughout supervision, throughout our work with clients? I said, well, you could see it in a negative perspective, as in like it's made me really change. But actually, I see it in the most positive way for me, in that it has transformed me over 28 years to stand here as my authentic self. Congruent, true to myself, very secure in my identity, but also for me, hopefully, as a role model to other people from any diversity and difference as well. The moment that I genuinely connected with who I was the moment in which my life completely changed. So I'll just very quickly run you through that journey. And also, as we go on, I'm hoping to kind of go through some of the learning outcomes that might come through the panel as well. So for me, I was born in a small Derbyshire village in England. There was a very traditional feel in the community. I always felt that I was a little bit different to my sisters. And around the age of 6 or 7, I became very aware of something more significantly different. Didn't do anything about it. Conformed to social constructs, social views, social ideas, and eventually, at the age of 21, got married, had 2 children, and conformed in lots of different ways. A lot of that was also family background, history, and needing to be accepted. I then had my son, so I gave birth to my son at the age of 23. He was born 9 weeks early. We both were in hospital, and I received for the first time some really, really quite incredible counselling support through that trauma. That made me think, actually, prior to that, I'd been working in microbiology at a cheese factory, climbing tankers and testing cheese. I suddenly thought, rather than looking at petri dishes, I'd really like to sit with a culture of working with people, working with difference. So I was offered my training to be paid for by a European community grant for anybody that had experienced a trauma. So I did my training, went right through that, and suddenly found at the age of 30, maybe I am not heterosexual. I realised that I was attracted to women, and my identity kind of shifted in terms of who am I in terms of my sexual orientation. At that point, I met my current partner, and we've been together now for 26, 27 years. During that time, I began by working with clients to find more and more kind of jarring senses around who I was. I worked in further education. I then moved into a voluntary sector organisation and specialised in working with childhood trauma and abuse. I then moved into being a clinical lead in a women's organisation. At that point, I really felt something started to jar within me. I felt, am I in the right place? This doesn't quite feel right. I remember going to supervision over and over again. I'm leading a women's organisation, but actually, I'm really starting to question my gender and my identity. I decided to go for therapy again. That was the moment in which, for the first time ever, somebody had looked at me and seen Jack. And I guess one of the things that I want to say to you today, one of the most profound things for me is, it's fantastic that we have our theory. It's fantastic that we understand how different modalities work, how we can engage with different people. But the one thing, as I reflect on that therapist offered me, was a moment of absolute acceptance. I came out as Jack. She looked at me, and for the first time I felt really seen. I'd always lived slightly outside of myself, slightly incongruent, never fully authentic. But in that moment, I felt, I'm 5'3", I felt 6 foot tall. I really, really felt this really wonderful sense of complete acceptance. Beyond that, what I decided to do in my 16-year relationship at that point was to tell my partner we couldn't live together anymore. I needed to find myself. I was terrified of coming out to her as Jack. She is an LGBT trainer. She worked in equality and diversity. There was no need for me to fear, but such was the deep sense of fearing non-acceptance that I actually ended that relationship. Fortunately, she's come along the journey with me, and we are still together, but I made her question her sexual orientation as well. She thought she was with this woman, but actually now I'm telling her I'm this man. Moving into that, I moved to Wales 8 years ago, applied for a job at the health board. Somebody at the interview was wearing a rainbow lanyard. I suddenly thought, if I am really truly going to authentically live the rest of my life as Jack, as a therapist, here in Wales, I am going to come out to this interview. So they said, any other questions? And I said, yes, how are you going to help me transition in the health board? It was poker-faced silence for a few seconds. Somebody said, we thought you were going to ask about holidays pay and pensions. No, transition would be much better for me, thank you very much. I haven't looked back from that point. I am very out, I'm very open. I do tend to have a lot of queer students as well as clients throughout life almost gravitate towards me. I've always said that I wanted personally to be very visual. And I guess one thing that I've also learned from that is I remember in the health board about 4 or 5 months after coming out, I received a phone call from somebody anonymously. They had seen a poster that I'd done for Stonewall. I was awarded Stonewall Trans Role Model for the work across North Wales of raising awareness around trans and non-binary people. And that person rang up and said, I just want to tell you this. I saw your poster today and I decided not to end my life. I suddenly thought, there is hope. I can be my authentic self in life. Thank you so much for giving me the hope that somebody who comes from a minority group, who experiences microaggressions day by day, have experienced transphobia an awful lot, is actually still out there and saying to people, despite everything, I believe in my work as a therapist, in my work in building relationships with people, that the core thing for me is relational connection. Authenticity, congruence, relational connection, that coming together and modelling within the therapy room that sense of you're safe, you're seen, you're heard, and it's really okay to be your authentic self. That was the biggest kind of indicator for me that, one, I wanted to work the same way that my therapist had worked with me. It was a profound moment. But that was the stepping stone then to furthering my kind of counselling career and developing in terms of, Jack, the relationship is fundamental to anything. Encouraging people to be their authentic selves is actually life-saving. So thank you for inviting me along. I'm looking forward to the other speakers as well, and also looking forward to the panel discussion.